Welcome to Around the League from UGAsports.com. This is the weekly show during the season where we talk about what's happening in the SEC. I'm Dane Young. That's Brent Rollins from Pro Football Focus, and Jim Donnan, the Hall of Fame head coach. And we are brought to you by Lane's Barbecue from Bethlehem, Georgia, the sauces and rubs that you need for your food at your tailgate. I'm going to tell you more about the Kapalua later in the show because this is the one that I've really been enjoying. We're also brought to you by Connor Grading and Landscaping out of Monroe, Georgia. If you have any landscaping needs for your yard, your home tailgate can look as good as your one on the road. Check out Connor Grading and Landscaping on their Facebook page. We'll talk about Connor Grading and Landscaping and Lane's Barbecue more later in the show. But first of all, guys, let's just get your overall reactions. What stood out most in last week's slate of SEC football? Coach, I'll start with you.
For me, it was just Alabama's defense, the way they had a really hard time making tackles in the open field, for a number one ranked team to get, really get their pants pulled down by Florida after the first quarter. Good plan by Florida. Quarterback runs have always given Alabama a lot of trouble, but just the overall rushing stats being in the favor of Florida, and then Alabama's inability to run the ball too. It was a good win for them on the road. You can't take that away from them, and certainly the first quarter put it in perspective. But after that, I was just amazed that they couldn't tackle any better than they did.
And Coach, I think outside of that, the offensive part of Alabama, big picture, they're just not as explosive. There's not Judy, there's not Ruggs, there's not Waddle, there's not Devontae Smith. Like those guys just, 2 years in a row, 2 first-round draft picks, those guys aren't there.
Mainly there's not Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris is the biggest missing piece.
And they would be in a world of trouble, I think, without the Ohio State transfer, Jameson Williams, so from an explosive standpoint. But my overall big picture from that, given the Florida-Alabama game, is where do I think the two bests are? And I think those two bests are Ole Miss's offense and Georgia's defense. And do we get it just kind of has a feeling to me like a 2019 type season where you see that, sort of next level offense against a dominant defense in the SEC championship.
Yeah, you certainly make a good point there. Both those teams have been exciting on the, overall, but I think it's a little fool's goal for Georgia's defense from the standpoint they really haven't played anybody on offense, and they haven't been challenged at all. And then the same thing's true with this Ole Miss offense. They haven't played against a really good defense. I mean, any way you look at it, schedule-wise, they've set up with, Austin Peay, Louisville, and certainly last week against Tulane. So what you're saying is exactly right as far as offense and defense. But I think from my perspective as a coach, I think right now, I don't want to get on the big bandwagon about either one of them being such a great defense or offense till Georgia proves they can stop the pass against a team that can protect the quarterback, and Ole Miss can make some first downs against some teams that can line up at least when they go fast. So that's be the big thing for me.
And I think that a lot of those truths will reveal themselves as the weeks go on. And that was my biggest takeaway last week. Was we had seen Kentucky come up to a hot start in the first couple of weeks of the season, but then all of a sudden that old Kentucky popped up in a very sleepy performance against Chattanooga, one that the Wildcats frankly got whipped for almost 3.5 quarters before getting a pick six that helped out and then showing up at the end. I was disappointed by Kentucky's performance to the extent that I think they may be closer to the Missouris of the world than the Floridas of the world. And I did not think that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you make a good point there because let's look at it realistically. Missouri's defense is terrible. They're not bad, they're terrible. And certainly Chattanooga goes up there with just an average 1AA team and did a good job against them. So all of us have got to be real careful about jumping on the bandwagon and then breaking our ankles, falling off about a lot of these teams when you look at who they're playing. But certainly we're encouraged by Kentucky's passing game, the fact they can mix it up, and Brent's gone over that very well. But I do feel like That was a very, very enlightening game from the standpoint you're supposed to crush these guys and you didn't. And it makes you wonder how good their offense might be. So that's why we're around the league. That's why we're talking about it. Missouri's defense, again, though, they played a directional team from Missouri. I think Missouri's going to struggle this year with that defense. I really do.
We're all looking for consistency in these SEC teams. And if you're looking for consistency in your yard, you need to call the folks at Connor Grading and Landscaping. We've all had that issue where maybe when it rains as much as it has been, you have water running across your yard. It makes the grass look a little funky in some spots. Maybe you need some different elevation in places. What I love about them is you can kind of give your vision to the folks at Connor Grading and Landscaping, and then they'll come back to you and say, well, here's why that may work and we can do that. Or here's a better idea that we have that can make your yard stand out even more in your neighborhood. And Brent, you had that personal experience with Mike Connor and Connor Grading and Landscaping. And we just thank them so much for their support of our show and then everything they do for folks here in Northeast Georgia.
Very much so. I got some projects lined up for next spring already.
Look at you. Already doing improvements on that yard.
What, are you going to have a waterfall or what's the plan?
I got some areas where I need some more sod. I think, some other parts, need some things redone because I don't take care of it as well as it should. But no, I got some things planned.
That's a good plan. Way to be thinking ahead. That's part of being a good coach, being able to look into the future, and that's what you're doing. And I think everybody needs to understand that different types of things need to be planned for the spring in your yard, and one of the good things about Connor, they can do whatever you need and give you a plan and maybe not do it right now, wait till the spring. But you got to be thinking ahead. That's a good job by you.
Check out their Facebook page for some of their most recent projects. I promise you, it's going to inspire you to want to do better in your yard and then have them come out and tell them how it can happen. All right, so guys, Brent, I'm putting you on the hot seat here for a second. You're the data guy here. So I'm going to go through 5 or 6 categories in the SEC, and I want you to tell me which individual player in the conference is leading in that category. All right. I didn't give you much of a heads up. So if you're listening to this, Brent really didn't know this was coming until about 2 minutes ago. And now he's going to test his knowledge. Which SEC player leads the conference in passing yards?
I'm going to go with it's either one of two, Rogers at Mississippi State or Corral at Ole Miss. Mississippi State's run the ball for like less than 200 yards total, so I'm going to go Rogers.
It is Will Rogers. That's 1 for 1. He has 1,083 passing yards, and Matt Corral has 997. Coach, we've been talking about Will Rogers being more efficient in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, he knows inside and out now. He knows what to do. That's a tough loss for them. It's hard to get 6 wins. I think they'll probably get it if they get a couple more, games that they can find a way to put them away. But that was just a tough way to lose. But I like Rogers. I like their receivers. They're really good against the run on defense too. So that's going to challenge LSU. We'll get to that game in a little while. But I know that our man there, that's why you're asking him instead of me. So keep going on these questions there.
All right, rushing yards.
Chris Rod.
It is Chris Rodriguez at Kentucky, 377. Surprising to me is that number 2 is actually Tyler Beatty at Missouri. I thought it would be Tank Bigsby, but Tank is a couple of yards behind Beatty. So Tank needed a bit better performance against Penn State.
So the reason I know that is my sort of interesting nugget from the Kentucky win last week. That was the lowest rushing yardage total Rodriguez has ever had, ever in a game. He's gotten at least 10 carries. He only had 46 yards rushing.
You got to watch out for the mocks, man. They're tough as nails, hard as bricks. The Chattanooga class of 56. I mean, that's a good team. No, seriously, that was really surprising. 10 carries and he didn't have that. And of course, the kid from Missouri went against Southeast Missouri State and they got all those yards. I think they had close to 50 points in the first half. So it's going to be a tough game for them playing against the Beast this week, though.
One interesting note that the 5th leading rusher in the SEC is Anthony Richardson, Florida's backup probably soon to be starting quarterback. And we know that he didn't play against Alabama. So that tells you how these stats can be skewed by some pretty crazy performances in a game or two. They will also level out as the season goes. Brent, SEC player with the most receiving yards.
I think it's an Ole Miss guy, either Mingo or Drummond, probably Drummond.
It is Dontario Drummond. You're 3 for 3. Coach, he's on a roll.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's Mr. Stat. I mean, he should be on Jeopardy on this stuff. Hey, how about that guy on Jeopardy? I mean, that guy's won like 25 straight. I mean, he's unreal. I'm excited to watch him tonight.
I'm glad they're talking about the contestants instead of the host for a minute. Although Aaron Rodgers could still go take that job. Who knows?
Yes. Yes, he could.
Interesting note with the receivers in the SEC. You were right on board with Ole Miss. Dontario Drummond's number 1 with 339 yards. Jonathan Mingo is number 3 with 290 yards. Right behind Drummond, the second highest receiver total in the SEC, Wan'Dale Robinson at Kentucky. Get to know that name because that guy is playing really well for the Wildcats.
Randall Cobb 2.0.
I had not put that together.
He definitely looks like him.
Josh Vann, that torched Georgia a couple of times, has number 4 in the league for South Carolina, 282 yards. So Georgia may not ought to feel bad about that one. Sacks leader in the SEC.
I had actually looked this one up earlier in the week. So I think I know is it BJ Ojulari?
It is BJ Ojulari, brother of Aziz Ojulari, LSU.
Yep. Hey, that LSU team is sacking the quarterback. I mean, they're really doing a good job rushing the passer. And, overall, though, they're just having a hard time getting off the field sometime. But I think there's another team that really benefited with their schedule. I mean, come on, they're playing some teams that, give you a lot of stats.
I'm not going to quiz you on any more. I'll do that for another week. But I do want to point out that total tackles in the SEC, both of the number 2 spots are Arkansas Razorbacks. Bumper Pool leads the league in tackles with 30. Jalen Catalon, defensive back for Barry Odom and the Razorbacks defense, 28 tackles. Coach, is tackles a stat that coaches care about in that sense, or does it sometimes show you where you have problems in other places?
No, I think they look more at missed tackles, from a standpoint of the opportunity to make a play, and then you don't. Your team, if you're a good defensive team, you're going to have the tackles spread out. It's not going to be one guy making a lot of them. And the thing about a team like Georgia, I mean, they just don't play many plays, the front seven. I mean, a guy like, everybody's going off on 99 for us. Jordan is such a big stud and all. He only played 24 plays last week. I mean, he was ready to go out for dinner right after the game. Of course, he's always ready, but
that's
24 plays. But of course, you got a guy like White that can come in there. You keep fresh guys in there, but and certainly Anderson and Smith alternate. We just play a lot of players. I mean, up to 35, 40 players on defense every game.
If you want to have your tailgate ready for Georgia's noon kickoff against Vanderbilt, you need to use Lane's barbecues, seasonings, and rubs. I've been telling you about this Kapalua seasoning because, one thing I love about the marketing and the packaging that Lane's Barbecue does, if you don't know what to use this on, let's just say that you're standing at the spice aisle just trying to figure out how you want to accent whatever it is you're cooking, check out that right there. They've got it on there. You got pork, you got beef, chicken, shrimp. I mean, this is just smart right here. It's on Brent's hat as well. There's some vegetables there with the broccoli. So let me tell you what's in this Kapalua seasoning from Lane's Barbecue. It's got granulated honey, so there's going to be a little sweet in there. Black pepper, that's their spicy and sweet. Granulated garlic, Hawaiian Aliyah sea salt, granulated onion, and then cayenne and coriander. So this right here is going to save you from having to buy a ton of different things and putting them together yourself, not knowing what's going to flavor well together. And man, I love just Hawaiian flavors. I love pineapple. This is perfect for that. Plenty of other flavors and seasonings and rubs. I just went out yesterday and bought another bottle of the Alabama Sorta White. My wife really loves it, and we've been cooking that and putting it on our chicken at home. You're going to need to get your tailgate set, whether you're at home or on the road early this week for the noon kickoff for Georgia. A couple other noon games in the the conference as well. Lane's Barbecue out of Bethlehem, Georgia is the best way to do that. Coach, I've seen their sauces on your counter. I know you've been using them.
For sure. I'm not much on the rubs yet because I got to get a little bit better at that, but the sauces are really what you got to have. And I know a couple of my friends around the neighborhood, I've talked to them about it, and one of them already knew about it and was using them, and the other one said they were going to buy it. So they usually listen to me. They know if I'm saying something about it, that if I use it, that they'll at least try it.
And I'm being honest with you, and Brent can tell you this because he's been around them probably a little more recently than I have too. These Lane's Barbecue people, man, they just love this area. They love cooking. They have a passion for it. They're the real deal, and they love college football too. Not all of them are Georgia people, though most are. But you can check out the folks over at Lane's.
But this is around the league. It's okay. We're all right.
I believe I saw in one of the videos that one of their people is a Georgia Tech fan.
Not that. We're not going that far.
Not that league. Not that league.
We can give them grief about that as well. I'm sure they'll love to hear that. All right, let's get into around the league this week. Georgia at Vanderbilt, a noon kickoff. Georgia, a 35.5-point favorite. Brent, Coach and I talked about this on UGA Sports Live a little bit on Tuesday, so I'm going to give you the first word for Georgia Vandy.
What's interesting about this is you look at the SEC in terms of PFF and our overall grades. So you got team number 1, Georgia and Texas A&M, up around 93 overall team grade. Team number 13 right now, Florida, in terms of overall grade, 81, I think. And then you drop down to Vanderbilt at 14s all the way down to 61. Like a bigger gap between 13 and 14 than 1 and 13. They're struggling. And the thing that I want to watch for in this game is defensive backs at Georgia, much like South Carolina did. They're going to take shots. Vandy's going to take shots. But Seals is leading the league in turnover-worthy plays, and the corners and the safeties are going to have opportunities to make plays on the ball. Do they get them? Do they get some turnovers?
Yeah, and I mean, for Vandy losing their leading rusher, with having this situation where he had to have an operation on his toe, that's going to hurt him because he got 74 yards against Stanford last week. So, but I think overall for Georgia, maybe play a little more bail technique where they're not just lining up and giving them a shot at the deep ball, and they're doing a little bit better job of holding technique, like Kirby said, at the line of scrimmage. But you got a guy like Speed that he's given up 3 big plays out of 4 targets, and he also has a penalty. And he's a better player than that. But Ringo continues to get more reps than anybody. They got a 3-man rotation. So, but I would just say it's one of those games. You know what you got to do: go up there and take care of business, and make sure you get out of the game healthy.
And to that extent, we're about to see if Georgia really does put itself as the standard and not the team that it's playing, because Georgia has the talent in comparison to Vanderbilt to win this game by 70 points. So what I want to see is a noon game, 11 o'clock local time on the road in a smaller stadium with less noise. How does Georgia kind of create that juice within itself? Because it's not going to happen from the atmosphere there. Next game. Go ahead, Coach.
You got that right. I mean, unless they bring in some country western people, play the national anthem.
They could be doing that as well. I did see, this was for last week, that a parking pass for Vanderbilt and Stanford was $40. A ticket was $5.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. But let's
give it time. Give it time.
Welcome to Nashville is all I have to say. Also at noon in the SEC, LSU at Mississippi State. LSU is a 2.5-point favorite on the road. And Coach, I know it's early, but this feels like one of those games that the loser of this is going to start feeling pretty poor about itself.
Yeah, both of them have a non-conference loss. UCLA beat LSU, and then Memphis last week over the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Both these teams, have some identity on offense, throwing the ball. Neither one of them runs the ball that much. The running defense for Mississippi State's been really good. The pass rush has been awesome for LSU, but against some lesser opponents. I just think in a game like this, which quarterback can take care of the ball and do a good job of hitting the open receivers is going to be the end result here. Max Johnson has played well, and so has Rodgers. So whichever quarterback gets to help a little bit with some good catches and And it looks like all games, how are these refs going to call it? Are they going to call it, let them go, or are they going to call a lot of nitpick and interference calls?
You hit the nail on the head with how the quarterbacks play. When you look at their play this season, and specifically Max Johnson, when it's a clean pocket, he has a 90.5 passing grade, 3 big-time throws, and 0 turnover-worthy plays. When he's under pressure, that passing grade drops down to 33.9, and he has 5 turnover-worthy plays. It's just, if they protect him, he's going to play well. And, Rodgers gets the ball out, average depth of target's 5 yards, so the ball out's really quick. The other interesting thing to point me is with the way Mississippi State's offense plays and how much they attack with the backs in the middle of the field, Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks are going to not see the ball a lot. In 3 games now, they've only seen combined 12 targets, those 2 corners. So offenses are staying away from LSU's 2 really good corners. And I think Mississippi State will do the same.
Good point, sir. I'd stay away from them too. Talking to Brad Johnson, Max's dad, earlier in the year, he said he was concerned about, the injuries in the offensive line, and they keep reading about the fact it's a revolving door there, so it's hard to get any cohesiveness there. But a very vivid stat there about the pressure. I mean, you look at it, the guy got pummeled against UCLA, and we'll see if Mississippi State, Mississippi State runs that 3-5-3 defense where they give you different looks, the odd front, but they can bring it backers from the outside and backers from the inside, and really can put some pressure on you. So again, it's going to be a game that which quarterback gets protected and who takes care of the ball.
Yeah, LSU is trying to establish a running back to be able to help that offense have some continuity. Corey Kiner looks like the guy right now. John Emery is injured off the field. He's not a factor at all. So Kiner's in play there. I mean, they've got a couple things happening, but they need some help, Brent, at running back to get Max. They need to get the ball in Max's hands a little more quickly than they are, because that protection's just not there. And based on the talent on the roster, I don't see the offensive line improving that much.
No, I think you're right. And it's something we'll probably talk about a little bit later, but it's not fun being in the SEC West right now.
I don't know that it's fun for the trip that Missouri's having to take noon Eastern, heading up to the Northeast. Missouri, a 1.5-point road favorite at Boston College. Coach, do you have any Boston College stories?
Yeah, Boston College is really a unique setting there for a game. It's just got a lot of tradition and everything. Their quarterback got hurt early. I really think this Jeff Hadley is an outstanding coach. You saw the job he did at Ohio State as a defensive coordinator, and since he's left, they've really dropped off defensively. Without, it's got to be a little bit of coaching and not just the lack of players. But I like Hadley's approach. I think it's going to be a tough game plan up there for Missouri. There's just a different atmosphere compared to, the Eastern football. Some of these people are still at the library when the game starts, and then they got to remember that there is a game, and sometimes they stay in the library and sometimes they leave. But it's just Boston College is a beautiful campus, and I did a couple games there, and they got some really good players. I actually did a game when Matt Ryan was playing, back at home, and then at a bowl game that he played in when they played. I think they played Maryland in the Citrus, one type of bowl. There wasn't a Citrus, but it was in that stadium. So it was obvious Matt Ryan could play then, but I don't think they got any Matt Ryans now. But I tell you this. They'll be a physical football team, and they'll give Missouri trouble because, like I said, Missouri's defense is like that New York Life commercial that when I was growing up, they're playing for financial security. They're running for touchdowns. They're doing it. Hey, their defense is wide open right now. Somebody's got to help them out. They look bad.
And Boston College, actually, granted, all right, let's remove the schedule part of this because they played Colgate, UMass, and Temple. But they 4 of their starting offensive linemen have an 84 grade or higher. One of those included is Alec Lindstrom, who's senior now, brother of Chris Lindstrom, first-round pick from the Falcons a couple years back. So they've got some talent on the offensive line. They're going to be physical, and like Coach said, Missouri. What's interesting still is that Missouri is the road favorite in this game, but it's going to be a good game. And they did lose their quarterback. Jerkovich is, injured his hand or wrist or something like that, pretty much out for the year. The guy that's now playing quarterback is, had started previously before the other guy transferred in. So at least they're playing with an experienced quarterback. And I think this is going to be a good game, good test for Missouri.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Missouri wins this game. I'm pulling for the SEC, but they're going to get knocked around a little bit.
If Missouri wins it, it means Connor Bazelak was lights out. And he's shown flashes of that this year, and obviously he's got the talent. But it seems like there's just some consistency and continuity things with Missouri's offense. It's not quite clicking like it was at the middle and latter part of last season. But like you said, Coach, that defense is the problem.
Yeah, well, I like to just make one comment, too, about last night. I coached at Missouri, and my head coach there was Warren Powers, who has some issues with his health right now, but unfortunately his wife passed away last night. Linda Powers, a great coach's wife, a big Mizzou fan, and I know all the Missouri Tigers are mourning her loss. She was just a real special lady, and thoughts and prayers out to all the Powers family.
That's from all of us at UGA Sports. We'll echo that as well, sending our love to all of you. At 3:30 in the SEC, this is the game of the week in the conference, the CBS game. Number 7, Texas A&M at number 16, Arkansas. The Aggies, a 5.5-point favorite. I say this game is being played at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, so it is a bit of a neutral site, but that's going to be a pretty split crowd. That's going to be a raucous environment, Coach.
Yeah, Jerry Jones is Arkansas guy, and he's playing in his place, so he'll have those boxes set up where the good boxes are for the Arkansas people, and there's not any bad boxes in that, but certainly this game here is a lot of intrigue to me. First of all, it's showtime for both these teams. Certainly no schedule at this point for Texas A&M. Played nobody right now. You saw they struggled with Colorado, and Colorado only got 90 yards last week against Minnesota. So, and then they played, two other weak teams. So I think is their defense as good as advertised? I don't know. Offensively, they got Calzada playing quarterback now. He's got a big arm, and he can throw the ball extremely well, but he has stretches where he just overthrows people and misses them. So I would function more around these two backs, get the ball to them, and not so much making this quarterback do everything. And then, of course, Arkansas's defense, bend and don't break, but also has gotten a little bit more aggressive this year. And their offense really scares me, knowing that we're going to be playing them, because they got the threat of all these RPOs. They stretch the field. We got that Browse offense that they ran at Baylor, and they really do a good job. One of the most improved teams in the conference at this point with that win over Texas. So I think they can go. They can sure go and play with the A&M, and it's going to be interesting to see if A&M's defense is as good as we think it is, then they'll shut them down pretty good. But if it's not, then it's going to be a tough deal because I don't see where A&M gets a lot of points.
Coach, everything you said to me is spot on, because if you're a Georgia fan, which most obviously the people that listen to this are, you should watch this game with massive intrigue because of what Arkansas does offensively. They have 5 guys right now with at least 100 yards rushing. The second most being their quarterback. So, and Sam Pittman style, and what's Sam Pittman known for? Offensive line. They have 5 offensive linemen right now with a 70 grade or higher. So they are running the football down people's throats with the way that they're using the quarterback run game. And Coach, you talked about Calzada from A&M, 50% completion in his career, right at 50% completion. Accuracy is an issue with him. The big thing for me for A&M with the backs as well, the backs are getting their touches and getting their yards. I think they have like 450 combined yards with Spiller and A-Chain. But Aniyah Smith in the slot. Game 1 with Haynes King, he had 8 catches, 100 on 10 targets for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Since then, he only has 5 catches for 35 yards. They get that guy back involved in our offense. I think Texas A&M can do some things. But this game, to me, I'm going to watch every snap of this, as much as I can of this game. And Arkansas, if you don't get this game, it's at Georgia, at Ole Miss, at LSU, at Alabama. It becomes just the gauntlet that is the SEC.
Hey, Sam Pittman, I need to get on that. If I'm getting on that AD's ass too. I saw that schedule for next year. They're playing Cincinnati and BYU in non-conference. Come on, man. Hey, but plus who they got to play. Yeah, I give them a break a little bit. This guy's coaching them up, but Cincinnati and BYU, I mean, I don't see anybody else playing those teams.
We should also give voice to Arkansas trying to do something that you used to try to do at Oklahoma, Coach, become the Texas state champs by beating A&M and Texas in the same year.
Well, that would be pretty good. You can do that. That'd really help them in their recruiting out down there. You know, you already got one up on Texas, and then all of a sudden you get A&M. And they're certainly good. I mean, to me, second year, you can talk about Ole Miss all you want to, but a combined team, offense and defense, I think they're ahead of Ole Miss. The two of them together now. We'll see how they do next, when they play head to head. But both of these coaches doing a fantastic job with their teams in their second year.
Well, that and then Ole Miss was in much better shape than Arkansas was when the new coach got there, because when Pittman got to Arkansas, it could not get much worse in terms of SEC standards, unless that's what Vanderbilt was.
Yeah, that was I've never understood. That's one of the greatest moves Jimmy Sexton ever did was putting a bamboozle on that AD to hire Chad Morris. I mean, good gracious, that they set him back a long way. But I mean, he's a decent offensive coach, but he just didn't have the record at SMU to justify giving him that job. And now he's coaching at Allen, Texas, and we'll see how they do. But, another thing that is impressive to me around the league is just the way the whole nation keeps talking about what's wrong with Alabama, because they want something to be wrong with them. They're tired of seeing all that stuff. And, we'll see this week they're playing Southern Miss. They're not going to get tested at all. Southern Miss is another team that's lower than Manure. But I think a couple things about Alabama. I guess is that the next game we're talking about or what?
No, we've got it. I mean, we can go to Alabama if you want to stick on it.
No, I don't know why I did segue to that. Go ahead and do something else.
Yeah, let me be the host, Coach. You be a coach and analyst, and let me host.
All right, I will. You're the host, man. You're the host. But I was just wanted to get off on the fact that certainly those two teams really are impressive for second year of the coach being there.
I'm going to use a Jim Donnanism here. Know thyself.
Yeah, that's true. Socrates. And Socrates about the same age.
Auburn comes back home at 4:00 after the heartbreak against Penn State. Auburn and Georgia State, the Tigers, a 27-point favorite. So you had the right state, different team, Coach. Auburn and Georgia State.
Yeah, I think Georgia State really big upset last week. Everybody was going on that Will Healy train of UNC Charlotte, really turning it around and all after they beat Duke. But seriously, Georgia State's got some firepower. I mean, they've always been able to move the ball, but just a big win over Charlotte. But again, Auburn showed a lot of things that look good against Penn State. I'm not on the Penn State bandwagon. I think I saw Greg McElroy said they'd probably be fourth in the West and third in the East. I don't think they're a nationally challenging team, and I don't think Auburn is either. I mean, they got issues all across the board, but they'll get the W against Georgia State.
They'll get that W, and then they'll go play 8 straight SEC games. So it's basically 2020 all over again for Auburn after this week.
Brent, what was the worst call? Auburn's fade route at the end of the game to try to get back, in it at the goal line, or Florida's 2-point conversion attempt at the end of its game?
I'm going to go with both.
I'm making you pick one. There's both so bad.
If I have to pick one, I'm going with Florida, the Florida call, just because Emory Jones is such a running threat. To not get him on the perimeter in some way and give him a run or pass type option, that one was there. Auburn, I mean, that one was just, it's the fade is always should be faded. I can't ever explain fade routes, especially on fourth down. Fade route is a second down play at best for me. And it's just, it was, both of them were perplexing. Now, granted, I think Harsin and Bobo said that, hey, we'd worked on that all along, and that was what we'd gone with. And well, if you'd worked on it all along, maybe you should throw the ball a little better and execute it a little better.
The fade route was very popular, especially about 10 years ago. What changed that its coaches view it as less of an option?
I think just the analytics of it and really looking into the success rate with it. It became such a, way less than the flip of a coin type play that unless you had a Randy Moss or someone of that ilk, it became that. It's the success rate just dove, and somebody actually looked at it and said, hey, this is what the data says. And coach was like, okay, we're going to stay away from that then.
You just wanted to give a shout out to Marshall. That's why you said Randy Moss. I know. I get it.
That's fine. In West Virginia too. Yeah. He's a West Virginia boy.
In Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, 7:00 Saturday, we have the Tennessee Volunteers at the 11th ranked Florida Gators. Obviously, Florida tried to pull off the upset of the season last week, came up that 2-point shy because of that 2-point conversion failed attempt, but really more because of the missed extra point that caused them to have to go for 2. The Gators 19.5-point favorites at home against Tennessee, Coach.
This Tennessee run defense is certainly something everybody's talking about, but they're going to get challenged regardless if it's Emory Jones or Richardson at quarterback, because it's just a good scheme. I mean, it worked for Mississippi State when Coach Mullen was there with Dak Prescott, with Fitzgerald, with all these guys. He just is very good at running the basic quarterback runs you can out of the spread, and just enough option there. I mean, it's just incredulous to me that Alabama had such a weak plan on the option. Every time they ran it, they either screwed up who had the quarterback or who had the pitch. I don't know why they didn't do it more, but a speed option is just so relevant now in man coverage that if the linebacker gets sealed, that end's got to play the right guy. If he doesn't, then you're on the second level right off the bat, even without blocking anybody. So I think Tennessee is going to be challenged here by this team. I don't know that Florida can throw the ball effectively enough to really be a national contender, but they certainly with their running game. And then defensively, I give them a lot of credit. They lined up in a lot of different looks and slanted and did a lot of pressures that really confused that Alabama team. And my note to Alabama would be run some tempo and don't run the clock down so long where all the defensive guys can get adjusted. I mean, I thought I was watching a pro game. The clock would go down to 1 or 2 on every snap. And, Grantham was over there changing the defenses and getting everything set. You got to give tempo against him. I mean, you can't let him just line up and think about what the next call is going to be. So maybe a little more tempo that they're going to see from this Tennessee team will hurt them, because they can run it really quick, don't they, Brent?
They do, and hey, Hendon Hooker played well for Tennessee last week, and this is an intriguing game just because of what happened last week for Florida, because you played so well and you got the sort of moral victory in Alabama. How are you flat this week? Are you kind of not as crisp as what you were and dialed in as what you were a week ago against Alabama? I will say, you talked about the passing game, Coach. If there's a game where you want to, all right, can Emory Jones be that guy as a passer? This is the game to watch and see if it happens, because Tennessee is one of the, in terms of pressuring the quarterback, one of the lowest in the league. Only 28 total quarterback pressures through 3 games, which is very low. No single player with over 5 quarterback pressures. So if there is a game where hey, Emory, can you do this as a thrower and really make us a truly dynamic offense? This is the game to watch and see.
Good points there. And that's one thing around the campus. Everybody's going around. These kids have got their shoulders hurt where everybody's patting them on the back all week. You got to be careful there, because Tennessee's got a monkey on their back. I mean, you look at their record against Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee and Florida is just woeful over the last 12 or 13 years. They got 2 wins against Georgia, 1 win against Florida, and no wins against Alabama. I mean, they won 3 times against those teams, and that's just hard to believe. So they got to get. I think they got a shot if they get some big plays. But boy, that Florida front was impressive to me, particularly playing without their starting middle linebacker who got hurt the week before. So this Florida defense just put the scuttlebutt on Alabama, 3 straight threes and out, and they just really, after the first quarter, they really did a great job. But the problem was the first quarter, they looked like they hadn't even practiced the first quarter. They couldn't make a play. We were talking about it, Brent and Dayne and I mean, it looked like it was going to be, really bad. But then Alabama started doing some favors the way they were calling plays, and they made some good adjustments.
And I think one reason that Florida front's looking so good is that secondary, it can hold its own in man coverage. They don't need a whole lot of help on the back end, and that's overall talent. And really, that's been the case at Florida for going on 10 or 15 years now. They always have super talented defensive backs. Them and LSU, I don't know how it happens, but they always tend to find some defensive backs there. 2 more games around the league. Kentucky at South Carolina. The Wildcats, a 5-point road favorite, Brent. That's a big number for a road team in the SEC.
But also, when you think about just the comparison of a week ago, Georgia was a 32-point favorite-ish or something like that last week. And then now Kentucky only being a 5-point favorite. Georgia, the betting lines feel a little better about South Carolina than maybe the rest of the world does. But I think the number for me in watching Kentucky a week ago, when you look at Kentucky's offensive production, 45 points in week 1, 35 in week 2, 28 last week against Chattanooga. Can they, hey, are people figuring you out a little bit already? But 2, can you get back to running the ball? Like I said earlier, Chris Rodriguez, it's the lowest rushing output in his career when he's had at least 10 carries. That guy's your horse. Get it back to him. Get back to what you do, and go ahead and get yourself a road victory here.
Yeah, the recipe for Shane Beamer's team is they've got to get turnovers and get some help with their defense where they're just not out there all the time. Having Doty in there is going to help them with the threat of the run, and he got knocked around a lot by this Georgia defense. But I think certainly they got some weapons there with Van, and they got the backs. But I don't know, their O-line just really is, their O-line just has a hard time figuring out who to block. Sometimes when you got that guy man on the edge and you don't even set and the guy runs around you, I don't know what was happening. But I just feel like Ole Miss, some of these teams, like Ole Miss, Kentucky, that are on the run trying to get up there, you got to go take care of business on the road against a team like this, because South Carolina doesn't have near the 1 through 50 players that Kentucky does. So forget about that game last week against Chattanooga and understand that really you're playing a team that's probably not a whole lot better talent-wise, and that's no bite on South Carolina. But I think Kentucky play their game, they can name the score.
I agree with you, and it's probably the same case in Tuscaloosa for our final game of the week. Southern Miss at Alabama. Brent, who's Southern Miss's running back?
I have no earthly idea. Oh, actually, I take that back. I do know. It's Frank Gore's son.
Frank Gore Jr., running back for Southern Miss. Shout out to my father-in-law. He went to Southern Miss, and a lot of his best friends are still loyal Southern Miss fans, and I'm sure we'll be at this game. I think my in-laws are going to this game at Bryant-Denny too. Alabama's a 45-point favorite. Brent, I don't know that any of that part matters. Alabama's trying to get back on track offensively.
I just want to know from Coach, how much is, as Coach called him, the Nick-tator. I like that. How much is the Nick-tator? How red is his face this week? Knowing that he won a game and can just light into kids after a W, that probably gives him the greatest joy as a coach.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be lighting into the players, but he's going to be lighting into that defensive staff. I can tell you that, among which he's the guy that helps coach the secondary. So they got to get their tackling down. But, one of the things about Southern Miss that always, we talk about things that always, when you hear Southern Miss, I think about Peach Cobbler. Because every time we played, I did a game at Southern Miss at halftime. Coach, you take a break and they go to the studio, and most places they don't have anything but just some cookies. They always had peach cobbler up there, homemade peach cobbler, and I couldn't wait for the half to be over to get up there. It was unbelievable. But I know the fans aren't interested in that. But
I'm interested in that. I want all of your dessert commentary.
I can tell you this. Southern Miss is going to need a lot of peach cobbler this week, because you're going into PO team in Alabama, and your team is struggling. I mean, they don't have a lot of firepower. This could be really ugly, but it's going to be a typical game, and kind of like the Mercer game. But I think Alabama's going to try to push the ball down the field a little bit to show they can throw it down the field, but get their running game going. When's the last time they had less than 100 yards rushing? I can't remember that, but they still got a very good team, but they're vulnerable. I mean, they're not going to be able to make up all these deficiencies overnight, but they got to get ready for this Ole Miss team that really spreads you out next week. And I'm sure they've been practicing on some of that stuff this week. So it's going to be roll tide for sure, but I don't know that the West is roll tide all the way like I thought it's going to be.
Well, and so Brent, that's kind of the point in this game, right? Ole Miss doesn't play this week, gets to prepare for Alabama. Alabama gets to play a much lighter opponent. Obviously, injuries can still happen. You hope they don't, but it's a lighter week for Bama too. This is two big forces getting ready to battle next week.
Yeah, and you think about a game that last year was just up and down, high scoring, and Bama just outscored them. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that right now. It's going to be a completely different game, and that's a game that I'm intrigued to see next week, and we'll get there when we get there. But
yeah, we got that game, and then in a couple of weeks we got A&M hosting Alabama. So that Western Division, it's going to be, and then next week we're going to be talking about Georgia and Arkansas. If Arkansas beats A&M, then they're going to catapult into the top 15, maybe top 10.
Top 10. Mm-hmm.
So that would be a good matchup. I know we're going to play that game at 12 o'clock too. So we got 2 straight weeks with the watch along show here. It's going to be early, and instead of dinner, we're going to be eating breakfast. But I can tell you this, the SEC is up for grabs in a lot of different ways, and not so much because we're trying to anoint these teams. I just think we haven't seen some of these teams that are really getting a lot of love haven't played anybody. Let's see what happens when you go out there and get tested a little bit. That's going to be the way.
Frankly, Coach, I think that's the way it is in college football. Like if you look at the Big Ten, Ohio State doesn't have that under lock. The Pac-12, I guess maybe Oregon's good there. But they could stumble along the way, and we've definitely seen Oklahoma not have a full grasp on what it's doing.
I can
week
tell
to
you,
week.
Oklahoma now is not there. I mean, it's just worrying me. The team, of course, I love Georgia, but Oklahoma is my next one. They got to make a move there some way. Offensive line, get their line going better, and I think they got a quarterback on the bench that's better than the one that's playing for what they need. They need a mobile quarterback. Caleb Williams gives you that. I can see them playing some against the West Virginia Mountaineers, who I know my boys pulling for them. I think that's a good spread for them. I think they can cover that 16.5, don't you?
I do. I worry about West Virginia's offense, but I think they can hang with them a little bit defensively.
Well, that'll be fun to break that down with you guys.
Anybody can hang with Oklahoma's offense right now. I mean, they just scored 23 points against Nebraska, the least amount of points they've scored under Lincoln Riley. I mean, they got a lookout passing game. I mean, they snap it to Ratledge, those backs and linemen say, look out. I mean, that's the way they protect. I mean, they got to get something going here.
And I think, like Dayne's point is a very valid one, in that college football right now looks very like the parity that there's a coin flip chance for a lot of teams, that it wasn't just, hey, it's one of these 5 teams now, and the 5 being Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. But those teams are going to get, I think, better, and they're going to and they have, for the most part, outside of Clemson, by the way. Clemson, their offensive line might completely doom them, but talent-wise, those teams are still head and shoulders above everybody. But because of things like the transfer portal and early entries to the draft and all the changes that are happening, you're not seeing the consistent play that you typically see from these teams right now. And I think it might be something where you get games, you might lose a game while you're just getting better and improving and be really good at the end of the year, but still have a loss or 2 on your record.
Yeah. And what's the one constant among all 4 or 5 of those teams that everybody's talking about? Offensive line. Oklahoma's offensive line, what can you do? Clemson, really pathetic the way they protect the quarterback. Georgia's got some issues. We talk about it, and you guys do it on film, don't lie. Just some complete miscarriage of just missing blocks and then missing assignments. And they're going to, it's going to catch up with you in a tight game. But they're going to get better. I mean, Ohio State couldn't really move the ball against Tulsa like they need to. And certainly Alabama with less than 100 yards rushing with their O-line. So that's the one constant there. There's not a dominating offensive line among any of those teams.
That's a great point. And we'll see who can get it together, because it's the middle of the season at this point, and there's not a whole lot of time if you have deficiencies. So this is where some really good coaching take place, but really where some players have to emerge and take responsibility. And that's what we're all excited to see. This has been Around the League from UGAsports.com. We are brought to you by our friends at Lane's Barbecue in Bethlehem, Georgia, and Connor Grading and Landscaping in Monroe, Georgia. Support the people that support us. Get you some Lane's Barbecue seasoning and rubs for your tailgate. If you need some work done in your yard at home, get Connor Grading and Landscaping to do it for you. Check out their social media pages, see what they're all about, and then tell them that you heard about them from Around the League at UGAsports.com. For Jim Donnan and Brent Rollins, I am Dayne Young. We will chat with you next week.